Okay, so now we have to start making our various maps. Let's start with the height map because honestly that's kind of the hardest one, and there's you pretty much have to do what you have to do to make it happen. The first thing we need to do is we need to decide what we want our heights to be. Um, Obviously, these cracks are going to be our deepest areas. And I'm looking at this picture, because right now this is just color. I think it will make our lives easier if we try to sort of follow the color, like dark colors being the lowest areas and lighter colors being the highest areas to a certain degree, because it's just going to make our lives easier. But doing this sometimes involves hand painting. We try to do as much as we can using levels and filters, but it's pretty labor-intensive work. I think it's worth it because I think you end up with some really cool textures this way. Uh, but it's for people who are really committed to doing these things. That being said, let's start thinking about it. Okay, so this is going to be our very deepest areas. I'm looking at this image and I'm kind of imagining this area here and this area here as being higher, so, and kind of finishing up off of there because they connect. And then these areas near the crack being a bit lower. So that's how we're going to start to create this height mask with that in mind. I'm not going to be too rigid about it because if the image starts telling me something else, I try not to fight it. And you see, you kind of go with the flow and see where it ends up. You get, it's it's very touchy-feely. Okay, so let's start. Again, I'm gonna make a copy by holding Alt and dragging this layer up, just in case I mess up. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this into a grayscale image. And image adjustments, black and white. And I get this dialog. And what this allows you to do is to pick out, it's going to either darken or lighten areas for you, depending on the value in their colors. So I'm kind of fooling around with these sliders and seeing what it does for me and whether it helps sort of in my narrative of what's going to be dark and what's going to be light. All right, I'll keep that dark. That one I'm going to keep light. So that one's probably also light, although no. Because remember, I'm trying, that one makes absolutely no difference at all. I'm trying to keep these areas lighter and these areas on the darker side. Okay, so this is now a grayscale. Again, I'm going to drop these guys into here. I like to keep a set of backups as I go. I mean, you can go into the history, but depending on how you have this set, that's a limited number of moves. And I just learned the hard way that it takes absolutely no time to make a copy of something, so that if you mess up, you can at least go back to a certain stage. I'm going to make another copy of this grayscale, and I'm going to work on this one. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get into my levels, and I'm going to see what I can do about really lightening up my lights and darkening up my darks. Now, I know this is going to happen for this one. Sometimes you have to correct for more than one area because, again, we're fudging this, we're kind of imagining what we want our heights to be, so we have to sort of do it a couple of times. So the first one I'm going to do, I'm going to correct my levels so that I get this nice and dark in here. Image adjustment, levels. And I want a nice contrast between that crack and the stone around it. And I'm not really worrying too much about any of the other stuff. I'm just really concentrating just on that area. So it's never going to be completely smooth, and I'm going to want it smoother. But these values are actually pretty close now to what I want them to be. Obviously, they're going to have to get dropped down from what's happening in our high areas, but I'm only now looking at the relationship between just the areas of these cracks. So I'm going to leave that like that. Again, I'm going to make a copy, and I'm going to go back to my original. And now I'm not going to blur it. I want to soften this up. Let's get a little bit closer. This is, if you're thinking height map, this is going to be a very, very jaggedy height map. I mean, we are making rocks, but, there's a limit to how jagged you want your height map. This would be fine for like a normal map, but not for a height map. Now, we could blur it, but I don't think that gives a very nice effect. I think what works better is going to the filter gallery. Just bring this down and seeing what we have in the filters. And again, we're just looking at this area. And I have a lot more sort of options, I think, here than I do just by using a regular blur. And I'm looking here, I don't want it, I mean, I do want some definition. But I generally, what I'm looking to do is smooth this out. So when I am making height maps with this, it's not like all jaggedy and pointy. And again, there's other filters you can use. And it definitely pays to fool around with them, and there's lots of cool stuff you can do with these. And I also use this sometimes if I want to do a hand-painted looking texture, I'll actually run that on the color as well. So we've kind of smoothed this image out a bit. And let's get into our blur gallery. I'm going to actually I'm not sure about this, but let's see what happens if we my question is, do I want to blur? I think I want to blur the original. I'm going to make a copy of this original one. And I'm going to see how a blur works, because we may end up combining the two. Right, so filter, and then there's a filter gallery, but there's also a blur gallery. I mean, you could just hit blur, but this gives you a lot more options. And again, you can have field blur, iris blur, you can put a direction on it, and you can get into all of these here. Path blur. I like path blur. We're not going to use it now, but all right, so yeah, I think we don't want to do that. All right, so we're just doing the field blur, and we're going to, where's our pixels? On a Gaussian one, and I'm going to lower it down. You know what? I think we might want to do this on the on this other filter. I think it'll work better. So let's try it again. Filter, blur gallery, field blur. And I just want to soften it up ever so slightly. Okay. So I'm pretty happy with what's happening in here now as far as the cracks are concerned, but it's not really doing what I want it to do. I'm going to just call this cracks because we're going to start getting lost in a minute. Are we using this one? No, we're not going to use these two. And now we're going to do the same thing over again. I'm going to make another copy. And this time, we're going to correct for this area out here. So I'm kind of looking to get this more even. I don't really care. Well, we can sort out the actual value of it later. So again, we're going into image adjustment levels. And yeah, I think that's pretty good. I mean, it's washing out these the cracks, but we already handled that. Because again, you don't want your height maps too out there. Yeah, I'm going to have to cut that out. Yeah, so I'm going to get a, I don't think there's a way we can do that nicely with a blend. I was hoping we could use that, but I don't think there's a way of doing it. So I'm going to come back in here. I think I have this set to scattering, and I'm going to get rid of that. And now I'm going to come in here and start to combine these two maps. And again, the reason I'm doing this with a layer mask is because it's going to let me come in here and change it. But I'm trying to pick, so I'm not really worrying about being too precise with it right now. I'm just trying to find that crack area and just start to expose it. Get a little bit closer. So now I'll get a little bit softer and start filling it back in. I just wanted to find where it was. And so now I'm going to do a little bit more precision work in here and just get my deepest deeps in here. And with the softer edge, I can kind of give it a bit of a gradient, so it so it gives me a smoother edge. Now let's pull back a little bit and take a look. That's pretty good. So why don't we go ahead and I'm going to apply this layer mask. So this is now, these two are together. I'm not going to merge them just yet. I think I am going to put them into their own folder though, so that we can start getting a bit organized. All right, so if we turn this off and take a look at our original again, we've kind of at least made a flat area for this. We can change its grayscale value later. And the other thing we want to work on is now the higher areas. So we're going to play this same trick again. We're going to make a copy. And we're going to go ahead and set the levels. But now we're correcting for up here. Okay, well, I don't want to lose too much. And again, I'm less worried about the actual sort of light dark value in here. I'm more worried about the relationships of those things with each other. Because we could go ahead and make this completely white, but it would be like completely flat also. But if we have too much variation, it's going to look really jagged and stupid. So I'm going for kind of the undulation first, and then actually I'm going to do it all over in here. I'm going to do it right now. Image adjustments, levels, and now I'm going to bring the whole thing, oops, it's a little bit lighter. Yeah. All right, that looks pretty good. So this is now going to be our high areas. It's actually pretty close to what we have. We could probably use the same thing. In fact, I think I like this. I think I like the one we made before better. So I'm going to get rid of this. I'm just going to make a copy of this one. Because now what we need to do is this is the hardest part of all. This is where the hand painting comes in, because we're going to have to create something that's comporting to this. The easiest way to do this, I'm going to come in here. I'm going to get my lasso tool, and I'm going to just pick out my high areas. And remember, we have two sides. So if I'm doing this on one side, I want to be thinking about that. I mean, we are going to have to come back in and fix this, just like we did the other one with the offset. So I'm hitting shift, and I want to sort of add some stuff in here like that, I think. Right. Now once we've done that, we can come into select and mask, and we can start messing around with what we've made here. And I'm thinking more specifically about the feathering. And this is going to help, because at least it's kind of giving us a definition of what those areas are. So we've now got these areas squared away. So I'm coming back to the mask that I want to, we're going to call this high, just so we're medium and cracks, so we know what we're talking about. So we want to keep these areas, and we want to get rid of the stuff in the middle, because we want to see what's going on underneath here. So if I come up in here and I've got the areas that I want selected, all I have to do is hit my layer mask, and it's now cut those areas out for me. So I've created the first basic height area. Now that's very smooth. I'm going to do it, I think it's actually easier to see this way. I'm going to come in here and now work on my, I didn't want to do that. I'm going to come and work on my layer mask. Getting my brush tool again. I think I have it set up. No, I want to put my scattering back. And I'm also going to soften it back up again a little bit and get it a bit bigger. In fact, I think I want to change my brush altogether. I think I want to go for more of a fan brush, because that scatters nice. It gives me because I don't want it too smooth. So this will give me a nice scattering. And let's make it a little bit smaller. So now what I'm coming in here and doing is just kind of getting this more rock-like. And it's just easier to see with the much darker area underneath. And once I've got this done, then I can go back. We're going to adjust the medium level so that it just, we're actually going to start adjusting for heights once we've done this. Just kind of follow along on the design. And that's kind of what I meant about it kind of telling you what it wants to do. And it doesn't really pay to fight the image. It's kind of helping it along. Now, once we're here, come into the brightness, and we can start getting a bit more precise with our heights. And that's probably right. Now remember, this isn't a normal map. This is just dealing with heights. I think I want this more jaggedy. It looks very smooth to me. I don't like that. So I'm going to come back in here. I'm going to start cutting out now. I don't want these edges to look like they're too pristine, which is kind of what they're doing right now. So, just mess it up a little bit. All right, that should be good. So we've got basically this area here that's higher, and we've got a medium area. What I do want to do is come into this medium area. These little black spots in here, I think are going to give me trouble, just like these little black spots here. In fact, I think we're just going to make a it'll be easier than cloning. I've got my brush. I'm hitting Alt. I'm just going to pick up a color right around it. I'm just going to kind of flatten these out a little bit, because I don't want things to go sort of having these little dots that are sort of plunging into the ground. And I just go around to whatever it is that I want to fix, and just pick a color really close to it and just tidy them up a little bit. So yeah, I mean, you could get as persnickety with this as you want, but I think for our purposes, this is probably okay. I think finally, I'm just going to get a clean. Oh, we had this. Could have just changed brushes. I'm just going to get a clean line here, and I'm going to kind of fix up my blacks a little bit too in the crack area. So I'm just going to get a pure black and kind of fix those up. Because again, we're talking about a height map here, so it's a relatively simple thing. You don't want too many sort of dots and other things that are distracting from the height, because all it's going to do is just give you, a bad height map. With lots of like this stuff in here, that's not going to read well. So you're better off coming in here and just getting rid of it. And the simplest way of doing that is just coming in here and coloring it in. Get smaller with our brush. And just pick those areas out. I think that's probably okay. Oh, we should have to do this one down here too. And again, I'm being super careful about where I'm hitting my edges. So yeah, I think that's okay. We don't need that anymore, I think. Unless, has it got information we want? Yeah, you know what? I think we'd probably do without that one. We could get rid of it. All right, I'm going to now just make a copy of these guys and merge them together, because I want to see what this looks like when it tiles. So again, filter, other, offset. And now we have to fix this. And it's important to remember to, oh, wait a minute. Hold on a second, we did something wrong here. I see what we did. Let's get rid of this. We've got a hole here, and it's looking at this background. I'm going to make a copy of this background. And now what's wrong? Oh man, let's go back in our history. I think we, okay, we like that. Oh, because it's looking at this. Okay. That's what we want to copy. Yeah, this whole, I was correcting it according to what was happening underneath, and I didn't realize that there was a hole. So we just have to, whatever it was that was working for us here, because we're happy with this image, we just got to incorporate it. And that's why that didn't work out when I made a copy. All right, so we merge those layers, and now we do our offset, and now it looks correct. So again, we can make a copy of this image, and we can start fixing it. So I think I'm going to use, let's just put a layer mask in there, but I think I'm going to use a clone stamp here. And I'm going to just, oops. I'm going to just soften this edge up. I honestly, I don't want to do too much in there because I really don't know what it's answering to as far as the image is concerned, but I know I don't want a line there. So I'm going to more or less follow this along, but I'm going to try to mess with it as little as possible. And you know, I don't want, this is the kind of situation where really a clone tool works best, because you don't want to just put in a solid color there. You do want it to have some kind of variety that matches, and using a clone tool helps. Now again, I'm being super careful at that last point. All right, that's pretty good. Now on this one, I think I'm going to get that up in there and just have this kind of match like that. And yeah, I'm gonna err on the side of making things higher. I'm gonna fix that up like that. And finally down here, very carefully, because I really don't want to have to do this again. We'll find out in a minute if we went too far on those edges, because when we switch it back, if we get lines, we're going to have to fix them again. And sometimes you have to, that looks awfully straight. That's not going to look happy. I'm going to maybe follow, I'm seeing something, a variation in there, so I'm going to kind of follow that in through there. That's a bit less straight. Yeah, I don't like this edge still. Okay. So if we hit the filter offset again, let's take a closer look at our material. I'm not seeing any lines, so that's good. Well, maybe a little bit in through there. So we can, again, we can hit our clone tool. But overall, I'd say that looks pretty good. So this then is our height map. Now, once we start looking at this material in substance, we might want to come back in here and adjust it, which is why I'm not in a big hurry to merge these guys. But I am going to merge these two layers. And this is what I'm going to use when I actually import into Substance Designer. These guys are, you know, if I have to remake the material, I can use these, but this is what I'm, at the moment anyway, considering my final. Right, the other thing we want to make is much easier. And that's kind of a map that we're going to be using for our normals. We're not going to... Photoshop has a tool that makes normals, and it kind of sucks, so I don't use it. And the one in Substance Designer is much better. And if you make a nice grayscale map in here, you can make a lovely normal in Substance. This is easier. We're not, you know, we've got our height information here, and like I said earlier, that, you know, it's more or less comporting to our colors here. So as far as normal maps go, it's really a question of coming in here, image adjustments, levels, and just getting something that we like as far as a grayscale map that we can work a normal off of. So, you know, let's make those a little bit flatter up here. But it's a rock, so we have lots of variety in here. I think that's perfectly good. So we're going to call this normal. And that's about it in Photoshop. So I'm going to leave this video here, and then we're going to pick up in the next video in Substance Designer, and we're going to take a look and see what these things look like and if they've come out anything at all like what we were expecting them to be.